Hey class, Philip Bredenberg. Here is lecture 1 for your church history course. We're going to have 8 lectures. Generally, these are just going to kind of give you an overview of what you're reading to kind of help you understand, because I do realize you're going to be reading anywhere between 70 to 80 pages a week, which is a lot of information to pick up, especially if you're not familiar with the topics, or if you're just not, you don't like history that much and dates are hard and names are hard. So I'm not going to focus on dates and names as much here. I'm just going to try and help you understand the flow and big concepts. So today with lecture 1, I'm also going to try and keep these under 10 minutes so you can just, get your bullet points and move on with your day. Keep reading, keep thinking. So today I just want to cover 3 topics which are going to be in your reading for this week. The topic of persecution in the early church, the topic of the early Christian apologists, and finally heresy and the general context around that. So, first of all, persecution. We all know that the early church was persecuted by the Romans, by basically everyone. What's not understood as well is why this happened. And in your reading, you're going to get a better concept of this. Topics that you'll need to understand. There's a lot of fear in the Roman world at this time. There's a lot of religious extremist groups. I mean, if you're familiar with any New Testament class, zealots in Israel, there's a lot of that going around. Like, Rome is very careful with religious fervor and where it goes. They're very happy with you, putting all of your religious fervor into, say, the emperor or the Senate or whatever. But when you go and you're talking about other, like, gods or, causing you to do things that don't quite make sense to the Roman public, things get crazy. So that's one reason why persecution happened. And also, just in general, the same is true with today. Human beings don't change all that much. If someone is different from you, you fear them. You don't know how to interact with them. Just a hot button issue for today. It's difficult for, fundamentalist Christians to interact with homosexuals, with liberals, with people that live in other countries, because there's little commonality. You don't come from the same starting points, and that causes fear, and that causes, if you have the power, persecution. So that's the basic idea with persecution. Read those chapters closely. It's a really, really interesting topic. It's not like these people are being persecuted because they're like, oh, I believe in Jesus, you should too. It's deeper than that. That's part of it, but it's deeper than that. Early apologists, like Justin Martyr. We'll get into this as well in the books. These guys come along in the late 2nd century, and they're usually Christian converts that have a Greek education and background, and they're very interested in proving to the Roman world, hey, Christians aren't bad, they're good, they're helpful to society. And they'll use Greek logic, and they'll use social norms, and they have really interesting arguments for why you shouldn't kill a Christian or fry them or tar and feather them or starve them. So there's a reaction to the persecution within the Christian community, saying we have reasons why you should like us, and the apologists bring a voice to that. Lastly, I want to talk about heresy. That's a topic that's pretty easy to throw around. You're a heretic, you're kicked out of the church, well, why am I a heretic? What have I done? Some of the basic ideas of heresy come out of this movement, and you'll learn a lot about that with Ignatius, with Athanasius, and various men like that. So with the early church, there's not a lot of centralized authority, like who makes the rules, who says, what's orthodox, what's not. So, you have Christian groups in different cities, different communities who don't have the whole Bible, and they are trying to understand how to make Christianity work. So you have bishops like Ignatius that create this idea of apostolic succession. So how do you know what religious truths to believe? Well, for Athanasius and Ignatius, it's what the bishop tells you, because he can trace his line back through the apostles to Jesus, and there's a connection there. So that's who you should believe. Also out of this, how do you know what heresy is? How do you not know what heresy is? Later on in the 2nd and 3rd centuries, the church will have church councils and create a confessional statement, like this is what true Christianity is. If you don't believe that, then, tough. This is also, and before confessions, there's also something called the rule of faith, which is similar to a confessional statement, which just kind of outlines, like, I believe in God the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, so forth, so on and so forth, So just briefly, early Christians didn't have a structure by which to say what we believe, and they're all scattered, and there's persecution. So early bishops like Ignatius and Athanasius say, well, we can trace our line back through the apostles to Jesus. We've been told what they said, and therefore you should believe us. And if anything deviates from that, don't believe them. So you can see how that might get a little hairy, like, well, what if a bishop goes bad? What if he didn't hear right? We'll get into that more later, but keep those 3 topics in mind as you're reading your chapters this week. Number 1, persecution, why it happened. Number 2, early apologists. And number 3, early heresy. Good luck with your reading, and email if you guys have any questions. Thanks.